After entering a monster-filled castle, a monster took possession of her body, cursed her brother, and transformed into another person. Afterwards, Ray and Clodin had a falling out, which ended with them sleeping together for a night without speaking a word. In the morning, Ray asked the maid Mary about the secrets of the mansion, but Mary replied that she couldn't answer any questions about the mansion, and that only the master knew the answers to those questions. Ray took a deep breath and said, "I understand." The scene then shifts to a rainy day. Ray is lying on the couch, thinking to herself. Clodin is enjoying the rain. She looks out the window and says to herself, "The more I try to learn about Clodin and this mansion, the more mysterious everything becomes to me. But now, with him, even the raindrops that fall feel like blessings and unity, and the sun's rays feel like they're burning me. How strange. I never knew that falling in love would be like falling into a deep hole. That's why I never wanted to know what it was like, and now I laugh and cry because of Clodin. I've been tamed indeed." Ray then went to the library and started looking for a book, saying to herself, "Here I am again. Where is Clodin?" She noticed the book she wanted and was about to take it when Clodin suddenly arrived and took it, handing it to her. Ray was stunned. She took the book from him and said, "Clodin, what brings you here?" Ray fell silent and thought to herself, "What do you think of us, Clodin? Am I a nuisance to you? Is there nothing you want to say to me? Am I part of your future, Clodin?" Ray looked at him nervously and said, "The weather is nice today," even though she didn't like the rainy weather. Clodin replied, "But it's not the kind of weather you enjoy." Ray started to cry and said, "Now I love rainy days too." She then asked Clodin, "You weren't by my side when I woke up. Why did you leave without waking me?" She broke down in tears and said, "Is this normal when people break up?" Clodin said to her angrily, "Who says that? Do you want to end our relationship? Then why did you smile and hug me yesterday?" He then bared his chest and said, "I thought I would stop this nonsense because I felt sorry for you, but why do you have to come to me like this every time?" He yelled at her, "Hala, you know that taking something I've given you makes me crazy." Ray approached him and said, "I don't want to stop, Clodin, I love you." Clodin was shocked by her reaction. She continued saying, "Sometimes I don't understand why you do the things you do, or why you can't answer any of my questions. Maybe it's because I've never depended on anyone like I depend on you, Clodin. But I can't help myself. I can't help but love you, Clodin." She kissed him and then said, "So you have to promise me that whenever you feel ready, come and tell me everything. I'll wait." Then she left quickly and left him. She said to herself, "I did it. I've never been more honest about my feelings in my whole life. I did the right thing. I hope Clodin understands how I feel." Suddenly, the old woman who had warned her before appeared. Ray looked at her. Ray thought to herself, "Clodin's nanny. This is the first time she's appeared in front of me since she tried to scare me and drive me away." She remembered her words, "Don't give up your body, especially your heart." Just as she was about to leave, Clodin's nanny, Dila, stopped her and said, "Lady Ray, you have ignored my warning." Ray was shocked. Then, in anger, she clenched her fists and said, "Do you want me to leave, Clodin?" Dila replied, "Yes." Ray asked, "Why is that?" Dila smiled and said, "Don't you really know? Because you're the only one who has." Ray interrupted her, saying, "Just stop talking." Dila asked, "Are you afraid to hear the truth?" Ray replied, "Yes, I'm afraid, but I don't want to run away before I face the truth. I'll wait until Clodin tells me everything." Then Ray left. Dela looked at the ground in silence. Then she looked at Ray and thought to herself, "She still has a pure soul, for some reason. It hasn't been tainted yet. It can't be possible in this mansion. This mansion is for all the cursed souls. From time to time, guests will come to visit the mansion, but each of them left the mansion with a curse imposed on them by the master. That's why I warned her to run away before she becomes Clodin's next scapegoat. She must leave this mansion before anything foolish happens." She went to Clodin and said, "Master Clodin, She's the youngest of the children who arrived recently, isn't she? Have you done anything to her brother yet? I've told you many times not to do anything like that. You know that everything of yours is at stake every time you cast a curse. Then she gave him a newspaper and said, "This is news I got from my recent visit outside the mansion. It's all news about major events that have happened recently." Clodin took it, and while he was looking at it, she said, "What if I brought Lady Ray back?" Clodin looked at her and then smiled, calling her by her name, Deela. He put down the newspaper and said, "Be careful with your words. Some might think I kidnapped her." Deela replied, "You know exactly what I'm saying." Clodin said, "Stop evading and speak directly." Deela said, "I know you can't say you didn't mean for her to fall in love with you. Let her go. You have to do it yourself." Clodin said, "I never meant for that to happen. I didn't make her fall in love with me. I want her." Deela looked at him in astonishment, thinking to herself, whenever he wants something for himself, he hides it in his secret place since childhood. We don't know what kind of destruction awaits him if he starts to crave someone. "Sir, I am not cursed, as you know. When you were cursed, I was fortunate enough to escape to the city to avoid the wrath. That's why I'm the only one who can travel outside the mansion. I may not be a monster, but I'm not an ordinary human either. Because of your presence in the mansion, I don't die, but I'm not a ghost either. It's more like I'm moving inside this empty body, but I can disappear at any second if I decide to leave the mansion. Are you planning to turn Lady Ray into someone like me?" Clodin fell silent and thought of Ray. Deela said, "I don't want you two to go down the path of destruction. I sincerely hope that karma doesn't catch up with you." Then she left him and silently departed. When Philip arrived, Clodin instructed him, "Do not allow Deela to enter this mansion from now on." Philip, taken aback, replied, "Excuse me, but Deela won't last long outside the mansion." Clodin glared at him and said, "Then so be it." Philip, his voice laced with tension, asked, "Are you planning to let her die?" Clodin responded, "She made an inappropriate comment about Ray." He gazed out the window and then added, "Make sure she never returns." The scene shifts to Ray, who is walking down the corridor, lost in thought and sorrow. She recalls Deela's words, "You ignored my warning. Don't expect Master Clodin to change, do you? Some things will never change, no matter how hard you try. And you'll regret this." Hayes said to Ray, "Look at me closely. Don't I remind you of someone?" Ray looked at him and said, "Oh, wait a minute, are you—" Hayes beamed, thinking she had finally recognized him, and said, "Yes, you do know me, don't you?" To himself, he thought, "Can you imagine how frustrating that was?" Ray surprised him by saying, "Didn't you used to work at Lisbon Manor?" Hayes exclaimed, "What?" The maid Mary arrived and said, "You seem bored, John." She threatened him, saying, "I can tell Master Clodin to give you some tasks." As Hayes left, Mary asked, "Are you all right, Lady Ray? Did John say anything strange?" Ray replied, "It's fine. He didn't say much." Suddenly, Ray closed her eyes and thought to herself, "My head only hurts when I think about all these things with Clodin, but why do I keep engaging in these strange interactions?" Then she said to the maid, "Lady Mary," while also thinking to herself, "I wish I could stop thinking." Ray asked the maid, "Can I have a drink?" The maid complied and gave Ray a bottle of wine. Ray thought to herself, "Lady Mary actually gave me something strong, the drink with the lowest alcohol content." Feeling sheepish, Ray said, "I feel relaxed." Suddenly, Clodin appeared and started playing with Ray's hair while gazing at her. Ray noticed his presence and exclaimed with joy, "Clodin, when did you get here?" Clodin replied, "Just now," and took hold of her, saying, "Come here, Ray." Ray embraced Clodin and said, "Clodin." Clodin responded, "Yes?" Ray smiled and said, "You have the sweetest lips, Clodin. It was the first thing I noticed about you." She placed her hands on his lips, and Clodin looked at her. Ray leaned in and kissed him, saying, "Stay the night, please." Clodin placed his hands on her lower back, and Ray said, "Please." Clodin asked, "What are you trying to do to me, huh?" and kissed her on the cheek. Ray was in a state of bliss, and here Clodin placed her on the bed, saying to her, "Ray, as you already know, I never had a mother. There's something I've always wanted to experience." Ray innocently asked, "What is it?" Clodin smiled and said, "Can you do it for me?" Ray replied, "Tell me what it is and I'll do it." Clodin asked, "Really?" And here Clodin took off his clothes, and Ray said, "Clodin, when I was little, there was a child who would breastfeed from his mother in order to fall asleep. When Ray finally understood, she said, 'Wait, Clodin.' But he continued, saying, 'Thank you for your great willingness, Ray.' Ray looked at him shyly and said, 'Wait, Clodin.' But he kept going, and Ray said, 'Clodin, wait, stop. Nothing is coming out.'